on the roof, the only place I know.
Good day, and thank you for joining us for our new segment titled Roofing is Not Over Your Head. Our special guests include our Director of Building Maintenance, Mr. Michael Salimbene, our Wynmoor Project Manager, Mr. Edward Moore, and our roofing consultant, Mr. Bob Dew. I would like to open up the floor to Michael, and we'll go over everything related to roofs.
All right, Kia. Thank you. Today is obviously about the roof, roofs and roof reports, and what kind of roofs are out there. We've been getting a lot of calls because it's budget time and what's the right roof, what's a good roof. So we invited Mr. Bob Dew, our roof consultant, who has been with us a long time and has helped us through a lot of questions like this and has always steered us in the right direction. We're going to talk about single ply roofs, silicone roofs, coal tar roofs, modified, and see if we can make some sense about what's over our heads and what's best for Wynmoor. Also, I'd like to introduce Ed Moore, who is our project manager. And once you put your work order in that you would like to have a roof based on, it's time or it's a bad roof or whatever the case may be. Once your work order is put in, Ed takes over from there, takes that, we'll talk to the directors or the presidents, put a spec sheet together and send that out to different contractors, get the contracts with the help of Bob Dew to steer us in the right direction, what's new, what's current, what's legal, what's not. So, and if there's any code changes, he lets Ed know, we put it in those spec sheets and we move forward. Ed, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think Mike covered everything. My role is to get the bids out, and then once we get them in, I bring it to Bob Dew, and he reviews them, gives us the pros and cons on it, and then we present it to the directors, and they decide on which contractor they want to go with. If you have any questions, Mike will leave, like you said, put a work order in, and we can review it.
All right, thank you, Ed. I know you have another meeting to get to, so
Yes.
We'll talk later.
All right.
Now we'll go to Mr. Bob Dew. Bob, you could take over and try to explain some of the things that are going on these roofs and what's, in your opinion, what might be the best or a good roof for Wynmoor.
All right. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see some people that I haven't seen in a while, and it's good to talk to everybody and kind of get a little handle on what's happening at Wynmoor with regards to the flat roofs. As of late, there has been a move away from what used to be the procedure that we followed, where associations would, for whatever reason, need a new flat roof or even a new tile roof and approach Wynmoor Maintenance to help facilitate that and coordinate it. In recent times, that has not happened in that order. Some of the associations have moved on their own independent of Wynmoor Maintenance, and some have reduced the role of Wynmoor Maintenance. So we'll address that at another time. I think today we're going to address the different types of roofs that can be applied on a flat roof or a low sloped roof, which I will refer to it as. And we'll discuss the pros and cons of each, what has a history of performance that's acceptable at Wynmoor and what has a history of subpar performance at Wynmoor. We will not really be discussing too much about what happens in other communities, that what other people are using. We want to stay specific with what has happened and what needs to happen at Wynmoor going forward based on the track record of what we have dealt with over the years. So let's kind of dive right into it. The flat roofs on Wynmoor are just that. They were designed to be almost perfectly dead flat with some deviation and deflection of the roof deck panels, which causes little low spots and some places where it's actually concave downward slightly. So when I say a flat roof or a low slope roof, I mean a dead flat roof deck. It would be better and is required of the new building codes that all new construction be naturally inclined toward a drainage edge or roof drains so that it has positive drainage of no less than 1/4 inch in 12 inches or 0.25 units to every 12 units. That being said, we don't have that at Wynmoor, so we have to deal with it in two different ways. At the time of a re-roofing, we could use a system that mitigates and reduces the amount of water that would be standing on the roof due to ponding and low slope or lack of slope, or a tapered roof insulation panel can be installed underneath the new roofing to create artificial lightweight slope incline toward the drains. Another variation to it is to pour a lightweight concrete mix on top of the concrete roof deck. The problem with that is the procedure is so expensive that it's almost cost prohibitive. So that being said, let's move to the roofing systems that protect and waterproof all of that, the underlying roofing substrate and the building contents itself. Historically at Wynmoor, when they were built, they were tar and gravel roofs. At some point, almost to the roof that, to each individual roof, they were re-roofed with coal tar pitch roofing, which is a tar and gravel roof made out of creosote-based coal tar. This is different than regular asphalt roofing tar in that it's asphalt roofing is a petroleum base, coal tar is a creosote base. They are incompatible. They cannot be mixed. If they are mixed, they will separate in the field. So let's look at the oldest of the types of roofs that were at Wynmoor as a re-roofing, and those are the coal tar roofs. If you can call up coal tar pitch, the first one where it says Red River Pebbles, that one is what I would consider a near perfect coal tar pitch flat roof. It's not new. It's in good shape. It's been well maintained and is designed specifically to hold ponding water. If you'll notice, this roof doesn't really hold that much water, but this is the top performer. At some point, though, it will wind up having to be re-roofed. And at that point, coal tar replacement is not really viable because of the limitations of the material availability. At this point, it's being phased out. And there is a toxicity issue with the fumes and the handling of the material at installation. If you'll look at the next coal tar, now this is just something very similar to the previous one, and except for it having Red River Pebbles as the aggregate, this actually has 5/4, 3/4 aggregate stone on it. And if you look at it, you can see some ponding water in the background, a little bit of algae right here in the front. And this one is also a near perfect coal tar pitch flat roof. It is not new, and at some point it will also have to be replaced, and it will not go back with a coal tar roof. It will go back with something that is available in quantity, which will be one of the roofs we will discuss coming up now. So can I pull this one down? And let's look at the most popular, which is a modified bitumen roof. Okay? You'll notice that it's got a security camera, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This is a picture of a 4 to 5 year old modified bitumen hybrid built-up roof, which is a typical built-up roof with the addition of the material being made out of synthetic asphalt and non or limited organic content in the sheet. This is the most popular roof right now at Wynmoor and has given us the best performance. This particular building, if you'll notice, does not have a positive incline. Does hold a little bit of water, but not to an extreme. If you look in the photograph, you'll see a little staining in the small areas where it has slight low spots, but nothing very serious. Let's look at mod bit roof, newer, sloped, perfect. Either one, let's go with number one. All right. This is basically what I would consider a near perfect flat roof. It is not a flat roof. This one has positive drainage because this building actually had a cell core lightweight concrete poured on top of it to create artificial lightweight slope toward the drains from the front to the back. And this roof literally holds no water. The staining that you see in the bottom of the photograph and this trace staining running diagonally across is how the water runs away from the elevator roof toward the drains. When this roof drains completely after it stops raining. If you go to same title photo number 2, that's looking in the opposite direction. And you'll notice that over in the bottom, you'll also see the same staining running diagonally toward the back. That's also from the elevator roof running out. And you notice that there's no other real staining anywhere else. And again, when this roof when it stops raining, this roof doesn't hold a drop. So this is what we consider a near perfect, high performing, modified bitumen roof and would be the ideal roof if everybody could afford to put a positive slope underneath it. All right, so the reason that modified bitumen is the primary go-to roof at Wynmoor is several factors. It has redundancy in that it's multiple layers thick. It has the ability to be serviced on the fly by lesser skilled persons, either by somebody that has a bucket of tar that can slop a little bit on it temporarily until it can be fixed correctly, or by Wynmoor staff if for some reason they see something that needs to be dolled up to keep it from flooding in. So in other words, it is a roof that has the ability to be serviced by just about anybody. The other reason is that it has the ability to be a reasonably priced roof and can be sourced through many different supply houses and is readily available. There are 2 variations to this system, and there are 2 variations of application procedures, which we won't get into at this time because it gets a little deep in the weeds, and I think we need to move on to the next type. So if you'll call up single ply roof looking shabby. All right, this is a single sheet membrane roof that is only 1 layer thick. And if you look at it, it is holding water, doesn't look great, has a lot of algae buildup on it. This is an older photograph, and this roof has since been cleaned up. Looks a lot better now, but it still has the same issues with ponding water. Ponding water on a low sloped or flat roof that has single ply roofing is never a good idea. All attempts should be made to mitigate ponding water on a single ply roof to the greatest extent possible. This particular building did not start out as a dead flat roof, and it did not look like this when it was originally installed. I have a suspicion that there are some underlying issues here that caused the roof insulation underneath it to decrease in dimensional thickness and sink, causing these low spots. That is another conversation that we'll have at another time. If you go to single ply ponding algae 1 and 2. This is a brand new single ply roof that was installed last year. So it's not technically brand new. But if you look at the amount of ponding water on this roof, it's absolutely incredible. This could have been prevented in several ways. The drains on this roof are too small, they're too high, and the roof is dead flat, which is going to be an issue at some point in time on this particular building. If you'll notice that there's quite a bit of algae growth in the ponding areas. There's also a pink and green slime film that is growing on this sheet membrane, which is an issue when it's just about fully drained off, but still damp. Walking on it is like ice. So it's a little on the slippery side. This roof has also been cleaned up and looks a lot better. But this condition will return again and again, no matter how many times it's cleaned off, because the ponding water is systemic for this particular roof because they did not put the mitigation procedures in place like tapered insulation and lowering the drains. So let's look at number 2 photograph of that, which may be the same thing. No, all right, let's deal with this. This is a workmanship issue. This goes to why it's important who the vendor is. These are accessories for the plumbing, electrical, and refrigeration feeds for the rooftop AC units. But if you look in between the roof penetration accessory boxes that you see there, which are called pitch pans, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of patching around the target flashing details around each of the pitch pans. Those are because the vendor is required and is part of standard practices to probe the seal where the one piece of single ply overjoins another with a tool or a trowel. When they find that the seal is not 100%, they try and reseal it and then put a patch on it. So I want you to look and count the amount of patches that are around these 2 accessories that do not form the target patch around the accessory. There may be as many as 5 or 6 in this one particular area. Also note that this area is underwater. Again, this roof has been cleaned up and looks a lot better, but these target patches still exist, and that's an indication of workmanship issues. So now let's look at, go to single ply roof trash. All right, so that is a single ply roof. Now let's talk about single plies for a second. There are 2 basic groups of single ply. There are the thermoplastics and the thermosets. Each one of those groups has subcategories based on the chemical structure of the material and the sheet content. The most popular that has been used at Wynmoor is what's called a TPO, or a thermoplastic olefin. We're going to use a lot of acronyms and initials when we discuss these, and it's going to get a little bit difficult to understand. So if there's any issues with what I'm trying to say or what the acronym actually means, please feel free to contact the Wynmoor maintenance for questions, and we'll deal with those as they come up. The TPOs are probably by far the lion's share of the market at this point, and they seem to perform pretty well. But it does matter who the installer is, and that is one of the most critical issues. One of the problems that we've found at Wynmoor is both longevity and puncture resistant. Yeah, I have written a letter addressing single ply roofs at Wynmoor. And let me be clear, I'm not saying that single ply sheet membrane roofs are bad. They're high performers. They work well on low slope roofs that have tight controls on who goes on the roof. Because of their very nature, they lack redundancy. A single ply means just that. It is only one layer thick, regardless of how many millimeters or how many mils it is thick. It is still only one layer thick, which makes it more susceptible to punctures, cuts, and tears, and also malicious damage. We have an issue with vendors doing quite a bit of damage to the flat roofs in servicing the ACs, and we're going to talk about that at another issue. The history at Wynmoor has not been great with single ply. We had, in the past, there were 6 buildings that had sheet membranes that were eventually torn off because they leaked and had issues and had to be replaced, and every one of them went to a modified bitumen. Now there are 3 single plies in place at Wynmoor. None of the previous buildings that had previously had single plies went with a new replacement single ply. The latest single ply that was installed, which is brand new by only a couple of months, looks 1,000 times better than any of the other ones that have been installed at Wynmoor, including the other 2 that are in existence. Like I said before, the installer matters. That being said, they're still less resistant to punctures and tears, and they don't last as long, or have not lasted as long as others. They've been averaging, and I'm just going to run through the list. The oldest one lasted for 15 years, which is not bad, but it was plagued with constant leaks, and they had many, many issues over the last 8 years of its existence. The next one lasted 8 years. The one after that lasted 6 years. The other one that lasted for quite a while was 13 years, but it had a horrible problem with leaks and other issues. And then the last one lasted for 10 years, and that was plagued by numerous issues with leaks and chronic failures. So it hasn't done real well at Wynmoor. That's not to say that it can't if it's protected and guarded against damage. And that's been an issue ongoing. So we'll drop back and discuss damage and issues from personnel that don't know that they shouldn't be trying to drop debris and items on the sheet membrane. We're going to now discuss what's called a spray polyurethane roof, and you're going to hear me use an acronym called SPUF. That's SPUF. It can also be identified by another acronym, SPF. The SPUF roof is an older acronym that is not intended to be derogatory, but it's what I was taught, and that's how I'm going to refer to it. Those are the foam applied polyurethane roof base coats, and then a waterproofing topping on top of it. Right now, there are 2 roofs in Wynmoor that currently have this. One of them is already starting to fail, and it is 2 years old. There is a brand new one that just got installed and doesn't really have much of a track record at this point. Both of those buildings on prior re-roofings had the same roof. Those were torn off, went with either a coal tar pitch roof or a modified roof, and now they're back at spuff roofs again. They have had pretty bad track records at Wynmoor. And if you will look at spuff roof looking shabby, okay. This is a pretty bad looking situation, and this roof is 2 years old. Now, I use the word roof loosely because the building already has a modified bitumen roof underneath this. This is the urethane base coating and then the waterproofing silicone applied on top. Now, I wrote a letter about this addressing the history and my personal experience with spuff roofing going back to the late 60s and early 70s. What you're looking at is what happens to the roof, both from ponding water that sits onto it and also issues with degradation of the coating. The drainage is augmented with these troughs. If you look down in the bottom of the photograph, you're going to see a linear slot cut down in the roof. This is where the applicator actually chops the roofing in a line back to the drain. And if you'll go to spuff roof drain trenches, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is where they actually cut the original roof, chopped out a section, lowered the drains into a sump, and the drains remained intact, but they put a sump in front of it, which is fine, and it helps some water get near the drain, but you can also see that it did not get all the water away, which is not horrible, but you see what happens to it. The algae builds up on the roof, and it's a little slippery when you walk on it. And this will have to be pressure cleaned or pressure washed very gently before this is recoated. Go to spuff roof coating wear number 1. This is what happens. Now, this is not impact damage. This actually is wear and tear. This is where the coating has already failed at 2 years, and you can see the pock marks to the left of it and how some of it is actually welled up and blistered, and the top part's actually flaked off or popped off, and you can look and see the yellow color or the orange-brown color. That's the urethane base underneath it that is now exposed. Again, on a 2-year-old roof. Go to coating wear number 2. All right, if you look at this, this is where somebody dropped something on it. If you look at the linear line of this, it forms almost an expanded L shape. This is the corner of something sharp. Right next to it is like a curved sickle mark. That's also something that was halfway round. So whatever it is that somebody slammed down on the roof actually cut through the coating and dug into it. The black is the algae that's built up when water penetrated down in there. Go to impact number 2. That's a close-up of it. You can actually see where it carved down into the coating. Go to impact number 3. All right, that one's a hexagonal bottom of something. I have no idea what caused that, but you can actually see where it cut down in a mechanical angle and chopped through the coating and exposed the underlying urethane coating. Now, these are on a 2-year-old Wynmoor roof. Let's take a look at some generic photographs of what they can expect if the roof is not recoated and maintained. Go to spuff roof neglecting recoating. This is the end result of what usually happens. The owner property manager, board of directors, or whoever fail to get the roof recoated in a timely fashion, and in this particular case, which is not at Wynmoor, this is what will happen to it when the coating finally wears out and there's nothing left and nobody does anything about it to fix it. This is shot. I doubt seriously if a recoating will be able to save this, because likely enough moisture has broken down the cells of the urethane where it's saturated. So coating on this would be a waste of time because it'll flake off and blister. Go to spuff roof ponding damage, right next to it. This is what you can expect from ponding water. From this situation, go to spuff roof ponding damage. Okay, there you go. Now, this is not at Wynmoor. This is not a Wynmoor roof, but this is what happens when ponding water sits on it. This is what they can expect to happen if they don't treat it properly. Go to the next one where it says spuff roof with hail damage. All right. This is not at Wynmoor. This is likely in Texas or someplace where they have hailstorms on a lot. This roof is pretty bad. This one will probably have to be recoated with urethane and then recoated with the waterproofing silicone. Again, this is not at Wynmoor, but this shows you how fragile the surface of this particular roof system is. So let's go also as a last thing. Let's see if we can go to spuff roof bad electric. All right, can everybody see that? This is one of the problems when you do coating versus a re-roof. The vendors don't deal with the issues that a re-roof contractor would have to deal with, which is like upgrading and repairing and replacing defective electrical equipment. This is a Wynmoor roof. And if you look at this, you can actually see where the fitting for this flex conduit, excuse me, that's a rigid conduit. It's actually pulled loose out of the disconnect box and is hanging loose. This isn't all. This is all over this particular roof. This electric should have never passed inspection. All right, so that being said, that's another issue, and we'll talk about that in a second. The problem with spuff roofing is that even though it is a legitimate roofing system, like a single ply, like a modified bitumen, it has its own section in the building code. It is not a top performer at Wynmoor. In my opinion, and I addressed this in a letter I produced about this, it does best on silos, vertical storage facilities, storage tanks, freezer vaults, nuclear reactor containment vaults, some structure where high wind resistance is required and it has limited foot traffic because of its actual structure and shape, and it is has limited penetrations that would just need to be addressed. So it has its purpose, but it is not a top performer at Wynmoor, and it is not cheap. This is one of the things that we need to address when we talk about this roof, and we showed it in that photograph where it said, and go back to spuff roof neglecting recoating. This is where the vendor that sells and installs these roofs make a lot of money, is the recoating process. Once you buy a spuff roof, your job is not finished. Over the lifespan of this roof, you will probably recoat it 2, 3, 4, 5 times possibly before you finally give up and have outspent its usefulness. So you have to ask yourself when you purchase one of these, what are my total out-of-pocket expenses for the life cycle of this roof? And this is evidence of when that's neglected. If it's not kept up, it's money thrown away. So that needs to be considered. Now, that's not to say that the other roofs also don't have maintenance issues, but they're not to this extent. All right, so let's kind of address a couple of things. If I've addressed this, not necessarily so much in a white paper, but just as a general letter to the Wynmoor Community Council about these two particular type roofs. They are both legitimate class roofs. They both have histories, some good, some bad, but usually they're okay. In this particular case, I would not recommend them to be used at Wynmoor because they just have not worked out well. The spuff roofs are one for someone that is looking for something different. They are looking for something that they're being told is cutting edge, which it is not. They're looking for something that is monolithic, which is technically an all-purpose catchword because monolithic is what most roofing is. If it's not monolithic, then what is it? Would it be discontinuous so that it's a piece here and a piece there? That's really kind of one of those things that our salesmen are dealing with to promote their product. So let's move on to what I think would work best for most situations at Wynmoor, which is the modified bitumen roofs. Let's go to the mod bit roof, older and flat. This is what most people will get at Wynmoor. These are what most associations should be getting at Wynmoor. Now you may ask, why not have the slope? Because of the cost. I'm aware that there are certain budgets that are limited because of reserves are low, and there's not a whole lot of money set aside for replacing flat roofs or tile roofs for that matter. So we want to have a good roofing system that's not a Cadillac, but not the low end. So we pick one that's in the middle. We want one that reduces ponding water on an already dead flat roof, but does not give us 100% drainage because we're not required to have that on an existing roof structure. We want to have one that's easily repairable, that can be treated and serviced by just about anybody, preferably the installer that put it together, but it can be put together by most vendors and serviced by anybody. The alternative to this is to spend double the amount and get tapered insulation installed underneath it to get positive drainage toward the roof drains and or toward a drainage edge. It basically doubles the cost of the roof, and that's the reason why it is not the most popular and what most Wynmoor associations don't choose. The drawbacks to this is that it does not last much beyond 17, 18, 19 years. At that point, it winds up having issues, and by the time it reaches a 20-year mark, it usually gets torn off and replaced again. The amount of time that it actually performs has a track record and a history in Wynmoor of being more than any other type. More than any of the single plies, more than any of the old spuff roofs, certainly going to be more than the new spuff roofs, and about equal to or slightly less than the coal tar pitch roofs. So that being said, if there are any other issues that need to be addressed that I've missed, let me know. I do want to address what some people think is a good analogy. And I like to say that the difference between roofing is like shoes. What I mean by that is if you have a pair of patent leather high heel shoes and you have a pair of high quality hiking boots, they're both shoes. They both cover your feet. They both do what they're intended to do. However, the patent leather shoes are more fragile than the hiking boots. So if you choose to cover your feet and run in the woods with a pair of patent leather shoes, the patent leather shoes are going to get beat up faster than the hiking boots. That analogy will lead you to the modified bitumen roofing. The other issue I want to address is vendor damage and original installers. Original installers matter. That's why it's important for associations to get with Wynmoor Maintenance and let Wynmoor Maintenance handle the setup, the acquisition of the vendors, the insistence on sticking with the RFP and specifications. Because when they don't, issues arise that have to be addressed because the vendors are not privy to a lot of the information that we've accumulated over the years, and they make the same mistakes over and over again that we've learned how to correct by instructing vendors what to do and what not to do. Associations that have gone out on their own and dealt independently with their own vendors have had issues come up and will have issues come up with something that could have been prevented at installation. If I can give a couple of examples, it has to do with roofs that have drainage issues and how to correct them. If the vendor is unaware of what we have dealt with drainage issues on Wynmoor roofs, they will not implement the corrective procedures that prevent that from happening. Or they will install or modify existing structures to fit their needs without consideration of why they were modified in the first place to the current position where they work properly. The next issue is installing or refusing to follow the RFP and specifications once they are involved with Wynmoor Maintenance, and shortcutting Wynmoor Maintenance and going over Wynmoor Maintenance head directly to association directors and changing the plan afterwards. That has almost always caused problems in the long run. And we have numerous examples where that particular change had to be redone again at the additional cost which the association had to bear. If people have questions about which buildings that occur on, I'm not going to discuss the building right now, but that can be done in a private setting. All right, so let's kind of address foot traffic on the roof and which of the roof systems that we've discussed performs or does better. We know that people need to get up on the roof and service the air conditioners and service plumbing. And if you have a roof that is less able to resist any possible damage by whatever reason by those vendors, then you will be better off. And right now, the one roof system that has been able to resist any damage that may occur and possibly has occurred at Wynmoor is the modified bitumen. It has the redundancy that the others don't have, has less fragility, and is better able to withstand any damage if and when it does occur. So you're better off with it, and is one of the reasons why it is the preferred go-to roof at Wynmoor. So let's kind of review a little bit. With the modified bitumen, you get a good, solid, reasonable roof at a relatively inexpensive price compared to some other roofing systems. With the single ply, you can also get a good roof. However, it's going to be less resistant to any possible damage from vendors, and it does not perform well under ponding water conditions. Again, the installer matters and should be able to mitigate that We do know that it has not lasted as long as it should at Wynmoor. The last item is the spuff roof. The spuff roofing has never performed up to par at Wynmoor. Part of the issue with a spuff roof is that you may have heard me allude to whether it needs to be recoated, and the neglect of coating leads to deterioration of the underlying base material. That is absolutely where the vendor's profits are boosted. It should be that the installer is required to return and inspect the roof on a regular schedule at regular intervals and make recommendations to the building owner or operator of something that needs to be done, like a recoating. This is not part of the original contract cost and needs to be considered when purchasing the type of roof. And that over the lifespan of the roof, they may spend more than what they anticipated when they originally bought it. This is not necessarily the case with the modified bitumen, and it's not necessarily the case with the single ply. Both of those two roofs do have maintenance that will need to be addressed during their lifespan, but not to the extent of the spuff roofing. And with that, I'd like to wrap up and close with just a bit of advice. With a spuff roof, the performance will not be what you expect it to be. And I think that your interest would be better served with something else. No one roofing system is perfect. No one roofing system fits all applications in every situation. The best way to deal with this is to go with the experience of Wynmoor Maintenance and get them on board and help you decide which roof to take.
Thank you, Bob. That was very good. I thank you and for all your support through the years. Your knowledge is impeccable on all these different types of roofs, and we certainly appreciate it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions coming our way after this airs. So I would say to our residents, if they have questions, to please put it in a 1, 2, 3 or ABC, form. Get it to me at buildingmaint@wynmoorcc.org. And we will get these, your cards and letters to Bob. Or maybe we could even make another show if we get a really lot of them, just on a Q&A system and just answer some questions. So I'm sure there's going to be some questions. But with that said, it was very enlightening. Even I learned a few things, as always, every time I speak to you. So again, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you much.
You're all quite welcome. Thank you.
You have anything, Bruce? I'll turn it back to you.
First of all, a little history on Bob. Bob's been our consultant for many years now. I'm going to guess about 20 years. Is that true, Bob?
Since 2008, but I've been at Wynmoor since I think 1991.
Yeah, right. That's right. And because of your experience here.
Actually, I was there before then when Martinique model, the model at Martinique next to the clubhouse was showing original apartments back in the day when it was Rossmore. My parents actually looked at an apartment, and my sister and I got yelled at for going up and down the stairs at the model. So I've been there since it was built.
Wow. Yeah, you're going back a long way. And Bob's been our consultant since 2009, as Bob said, and he gives reports to building maintenance on each building twice a year. And when he sees things that aren't correct, it's noted, and the buildings are expected to take care of it. And Mike gets those reports out to those directors of the building. So we should all feel very comfortable, and that's why we've had good success with our roofs. And I like what you said before, Bob. You were saying, like, well, maybe you only get 18, 19, 20 years out of a roof. I can handle that. That's a pretty good number. I think you made it sound like that was like a low number, but that's the number we're trying to achieve, is 20 years out of a roof. That's a good number, isn't it?
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. And I think we're getting a lot of success of the roofs that, we put on since Wilma. We put a lot of roofs on because, again, of all that damage. So many of our roofs are, in that area, transition area, of being good now, but in the next few years, we got to start looking at change.
Correct.
Okay. And again, Bob's here for us. When your board of directors are doing the budget, hopefully they'll reach out to him if they have any questions. Most of your directors know already because they know Bob and they know building maintenance, and they already have their plan. This was just to let you know that we are aware of it and we're on top of it. And again, thank you to everybody involved, Mike, Ed, and Bob, and everybody in building maintenance. And thanks, guys.
Let's go up on the roof. Up on the